Hello everyone, my name is Renee Gadar. I'm the Global Artistic Director of Texture here with Aveda. I've been in that position for about since January. And then my good friend Kelly asked me to do a haircut for Hairbrain Live. So I'm going to be showing you something that I learned from my mentor about 7 years ago, Lina Arrojo, which is horizontal graduation. It's a really simple technique. It rocked my world. If done well, it can work for so many of your curly clients. I predominantly cut wet, so I'm going to show you guys a wet haircut today. My doll head is an amber from Pivot Point, and I'll be using, just to go over my tools, I'll be using a blow dryer with a diffuser, and then I just have my comb and my scissors and 5 clips, and that's all I'm using today. And so we'll go through. This is what, hello everybody, and just so you know, hi from Hong Kong, hi Hong Kong. I am gonna do my best. I'm here solo because we are social distancing. So I'm gonna do my best to do this haircut and try to pay attention to questions. If I miss your question, please just keep reposting the question. I'm sure I'm gonna look over, I'm gonna see it. But thank you again for joining me today. So this is kind of what the doll head looks like when she starts. Just wanted to show you guys that. And then I already have my doll pre-sectioned. So how you would section for this haircut in particular. When you're dealing with curly hair, sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming because it can be a lot in volume, right? So I like to break down the haircut. I'm going to be starting in the back with this horizontal graduation. How I part her hair, I part it straight down the center, and then I do a radial parting, kind of from the top of her head to the drop back crown, right about here. And then I do my rounds, my circle, the diameter of my circle is where the hair rounds away. So that's kind of how big I usually do my circle. Here, I'm going to do a lot more roundness to get volume, but in the back, that's where I'm going to show you that horizontal graduation. And in the front, I'm going to add a little bit of a fringe just so we can switch up her look quite a bit. I'm going to take her short because, as you can see, she's not that long to start with, and if I kept it too long, you wouldn't see as much of the impact of the cut. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys get the most of this as you can. So, hi everybody joining me from, people joining me from Nebraska, from Italy. It's amazing. And I am trying to get used to technology. All right, cool. So we're gonna start in the back of this haircut. For horizontal graduation, all that essentially means is that you're keeping your partings as you're moving up pretty much horizontal. Also your fingers. Sometimes with graduation, you're holding your fingers at 45 degrees. Your partings look like they're going to build for 45 degrees, but this is gonna stay more horizontal. The reason being is because curly hair kind of exaggerates whatever haircut you're doing. You can cut a one length line on a curly client and it'll creep up when it's finished and it's dry and look like a very subtle graduation. That's what we're going for. A subtle graduation that has a whole lot of impact. So, starting in the back, I drop my 2 sections. And I'm just going to moisten her back down. Once I find my spray bottle. I know that for many people, dry cutting is kind of the move for curly hair. But for me, I've been doing curly hair for a long time, so things such as shrinkage and things like that aren't, I feel like I can navigate around that pretty well. And so I like to cut things wet, keep it all consistent, build like one brick at a time. So I put my client's head down. I'm gonna start my first section here. So it's not completely horizontal, but it's also not completely at a 45, right? So a little thicker in the middle, coming down thinner here. And the key to this also is just how I'm holding my fingers. So for the first section, you're gonna hold at 0 degrees, as in you are going to be as close to her neck as possible. And you're gonna cut straight. So I'm gonna cut her here. I hope that you guys are able to see. Right. So I'm gonna cut her straight right here. When I comb, I make sure that my combing is consistent. I am using the fine teeth of my comb. We are going short, and I'm going to want consistent tension for this. So I'm going to use the skinnier teeth on my comb. Right. So once I'm done, I check for balance. Pull it straight down. Feels good. Kind of see where that's landing. I like where that length is landing at the resting length. So now I go again. I mimic the first parting that I've done and my next one. And when you're cutting a precision haircut, whether on straight hair or curly hair, you always want to make sure that your partings are visible to you and they're neat and balanced, consistent on both sides. When you put in the work to do the hairdressing methodically and neatly, it shows in your work. So, my next section now, I'm going to graduate horizontally. What that means is that I am going to comb the hair down, right? But in the center, I'm going to lift just a little. I'm going to elevate just a little bit. My fingers are still horizontal, my partings are somewhat horizontal, and I'm just going to lift in the center just a little. And as I come down to the side, I'm going to reduce my graduation. I'm going to work down to 0 degrees. Again, so here in the center, I hold up just a little. And as I come down the side, I gradually reduce the amount I'm holding up. So by the time I get to the corner right here, I'm pressed up against her skin. I do the same on the other side. I gradually move down until at my last section, the back of my fingers are touching her skin. And then again, I check for balance. A little longer on this side, so I come back in, make sure I'm balanced as I go. Here we go. So what that's done is this feels like a one length because we worked down to 0 degrees again. And here, I'm starting to build a little bit of graduation just by elevating. My next section, I mimic this parting again. I make sure that I'm balanced on both sides. I also want to make sure that my subsections are small enough so that I can see my guide through the subsection, through the hair. So if I took a subsection that was too big, I wouldn't be able to see my guide underneath. I wouldn't know where I was cutting from. So now in the center, again, I'm going to elevate just a little bit more than I did the last time. Remember, the first section was at 0, right on the skin. The second section elevated just a little, and then I worked back down to 0 elevation. Here, I'm elevating just a little bit more, and again, I'm going to work back down to that 0 elevation. So I'm here, I can see my guide, I cut to my guide. I don't want my fingers to go over my guide because I want to see my guide. So I bring my fingers down to just about where my guide is, and I cut right at my guide. Not below my guide, obviously not above, right at my guide. So I want to make sure that I'm elevating and slowly decreasing elevation as I go. To control that, I usually don't cut past my second knuckle because I want to take it a little at a time to make sure that I'm having full control of where this graduation and decreasing the graduation is going to be. And as I work through, I check for balance every time. So here we go. I do it again until I work up, until I complete the back. I'm here. Now, as you see, my subsections are getting a little steeper the further that I go up because the head's rounding away from me. Right. So, same idea. So I'm going to increase my elevation here See, my fingers are horizontal. I'm not pointed this way to create traditional graduation. I'm horizontal. I'm elevating just a little more than I did in my last section. And just like the times before, as I move down, I am decreasing my elevation. Also, as I move up the hair, I am now using the wider tooth of my comb. So usually when I am building my baseline, that first line, I like to use the finer teeth of the comb because I feel more in control. I have my maximum tension, and I feel like I get things just a little bit more precise there. As I move up the hair, I want to get a little looser, give it more room to breathe and live, so I use the wider teeth of my comb. All right, so I'm here. I'm about at my second to last section. I don't want to work on sections that are too big. I want to maintain as much balance and control as I can. And I also want to make sure that I can see my guide every time I move up. Same idea. Again, I am elevating just a little bit more than last time. My fingers are being held horizontally. And I cut. And then I decrease elevation as I move towards her ear. And by the time I get towards her ear, I want to be back at 0 elevation, right? And I'm working that down gradually. You don't want to take big steps to that. You want it to be gradual. So here I am. Working down gradually to 0 elevation. Here, I am now at 0. I have one last section, and I think that you guys can see, here's my baseline, and here's this graduation building. I'm going to show you the profile as soon as I'm done with the back. This is my last section of the back, and then we'll move there. Moisten her back down, keep the plane nice and even. Right. So here, I elevate. Fingers still horizontal. I'm elevating a little bit more than last time. I'm using the wide teeth of my comb. And as I'm moving towards her ear, I am gradually decreasing my elevation to get it back to 0 elevation. What is 0 elevation? That is me pressed up against her neck and I have no elevation going. I'm pressed up against her skin, my fingers, right? So I'm back at 0. And now here, same thing. Kind of return to that elevation that I was at. And sometimes, like when you're just now starting out, like doing this haircut, figuring out that elevation that you were at formally, just before on a different side, because our body positions are a little different based on where we're cutting, you're gonna have to keep checking for balance as you go. So here, by the time I come to the ear, I wanna be at 0 elevation. What is 0 elevation? That is me on the client's skin. Now, I don't know if you are able to see, but here I have my baseline and you can see that graduation building, and it's a real subtle graduation. What I like about horizontal graduation is that I can determine how much graduation I want in this hair just by elevation, not going too strong, because sometimes I feel like if it's too graduated, it can kind of look a little older. I'm going to go through and I'm going to try to see if there were questions coming up. Hi from New York. Awesome. Naples, all over. This is amazing. Great. Now, we're going to move on to the sides. We've done the back. Now we're going to move on to the sides. Trying to adjust the lighting here to make sure that you guys can see. Cool. So now on the side, you want to follow this kind of graduation and kind of moving it down to 0 degrees of elevation. Same kind of concept. I'm going to show you the sectioning that I'm going to take. Hi from Florida. Hi from Croatia. Okay, so now from here, I want to take horizontal sections again. What I mean by that is this. There it is. That's going to be my first section here. It's horizontal, it's coming down towards her face here, right? So that's my point that I'm working at. I'm gonna put my client's head back up straight because I don't want this front line to jump up. I want it to be consistent. If anything, I want it to actually slope down a little bit because curly hair likes to jump and I don't want it to look too rounded in the front. I kind of want it to come down. So I hold this hair down. My initial cut, I'm gonna hold down at 0 degrees of elevation. Bring this hair to me here. And there we go. And that's my baseline right there. Now, my next section is gonna stay horizontal. This time what I'm gonna do is I'm going to elevate from right here and then I'm gonna work back down to my 0 degrees of elevation, similar to what we did in the back. So I'm gonna elevate. And when you're combing a section of hair, you wanna make sure that your comb is mimicking whatever your parting is doing. That helps you also be consistent and be a little bit more precise. Because our body position is different from side to side. And so a good way to work in that balance is making sure that your comb is mimicking the parting that you know that you can control, that you know is balanced. Right, so now here, as I move down towards the face, I'm working towards that 0 elevation. So here we go again. And this hair is not going to reach just because of how my doll head is. But I'm going to make sure. Elevate, bring down my elevation. Got a little bit in the corner, so I cut that. Boom. And that's that. That's one side. So you can see my graduation building there, a little bit of graduation that's connecting that, and I have my through line here. I'm going to work on the other side. The length of my shears is a 5, and they're from Elevate Hair. Shout out to Elevate Hair. I forget what brand Elevate's using, but you can go on elevatehair.com and you can purchase the shears that they're selling. It's a really beautiful pair of scissors made from Japan. Now, here again, I'm keeping things a little bit more horizontal towards the face. So horizontal just means this is horizontal, relatively horizontal to the floor. So if the floor is like this, the parting is also like this. Diagonal would be more coming down on the side, perpendicular to the floor. So this is more horizontal. Now again, I'm going to comb all of this down. And I'm going to cut at 0 degrees elevation. 0 degrees elevation, again, for those of you who are just now tuning in, is when I am pressed against my client's skin. That means I'm not lifting up at all. I am all the way down on her skin. Then I'm going to come in the front. When I cut that first section, I'm going to come in the front. I'm going to look at my client straight on, and I'm going to check the balance in the front. Make sure I'm in a good spot. I'm going to mimic my last parting into my next. Now here, for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to elevate just a little as I'm to the center. And as I get towards her face, I'm going to decrease elevation to 0. So I'm up here. And as I work towards her face, I gradually move down to 0 degrees of elevation. There we go. Now, her hair in the front may not reach, but I'm going to use this last section just to make sure I have everything. So here I'm here, nothing to cut. I'm here, nothing to cut. And I come all the way down. down. I got something just to cut in the front. Now while I'm here, I'm going to cut her fringe now. Before I drop this radial parting, I'm going to cut her fringe. I'm going to show you what that's like. Hello from Greece. I love curly hair too, Valeria. Just trying to make sure that you guys are able to see this haircut as I work through. All right. So now the next section is going to be my client's fringe. Now curly fringes, especially cutting wet, can be a little scary for some because it can shrink a lot. And what you don't want to do is cut a fringe way too short. So curlies, you're going to cut long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my triangular section here. That's going to be in the front. That's going to end at her recession area here. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. To her recession area there. And I'm going to put that away. Now I'm going to start building this fringe. Just wanted you to see the parting right there for the fringe. Cool. Hello from Texas. Great. Your kids have curly hair, Christina. This is wonderful then for you. Okay, so now within this section, I'm making a horizontal parting, right? Which means horizontal to the floor, not perpendicular to the floor. And what I'm going to do is kind of comb the hair and see where it falls. I kind of want her bangs to be at the bridge of her nose right here. So I'm going to come down, kind of pop it up, see where it's falling. And I'm going to cut the center. And as I move out, I'm going to add length by pointing my fingers down so that she's shorter here and kind of longer through here. I'm going to do the same on the other side so you're able to see. I want to keep some length, so I want to angle my fingers. I don't want to keep them horizontal, and I'm bringing the hair to me. Sorry for the New York sounds in the background. Right. Now, I also like to put a little bit of graduation into a bang as well. And again, I'm going to use horizontal graduation to do that. Here's my horizontal parting. I'm going to keep my fingers horizontal, and I'm just going to elevate just a little in the center. And as I move towards the corners, I'm going to go back down to 0 elevation. So here I am. I'm elevating just a little bit off of her face. And then I'm going to work my way gradually back down to 0 elevation. 0 elevation means my hand is as close to her face as possible. So I'm elevating highest in the middle and decreasing elevation slowly as I get to the corner. And there's that. Last one, comb that hair all the way down. I elevate just a little bit more. And as I move out, I drop elevation and I get a little closer to her face until when I'm at the corner, I'm fully on her face. Next one. Same thing, work down to 0 elevation, and there is her fringe. Now, I'm going to connect her fringe by just holding out the hair and kind of cutting. I hold it up, I hold my scissors kind of diagonally, and I cut like that. Sometimes I don't like to do it in my fingers because this can jump a lot and I don't want to cut that corner off. So for this, just connecting that, I'll do with my shears, freehand. I'm bringing that connection there. I'm going to do the same on the other side, just so that you're able to see. See, there's a difference between here and it looks like it just cuts off and then there's some length here. I want to marry those two things. So I just hold the hair and I freehand it, but I don't want to cut my corner off. I still want her to have length here. All right, so what you can see is that graduation building in the front, and now she has a little bit of a fringe, and she's got a little graduation in her fringe too. This is great for clients who have curly hair, but it's also fine and they want it to be big. You put a little graduation in the bang, and as you can see, it keeps the bang up, so it's not so stagnant on the face. It gives them a little something, a little bit more volume. Now we're going to tackle this radial parting. How I like to tackle this radial, well, it depends on my client. I do this a number of ways. Most of my curly hair haircuts is done similar to this. This is kind of the parting, and anybody who's seen my Facebook Live way back in February, this is going to look very familiar because this is how I part curly hair all the time, right? But the center is where I make the magic happen. So for this center section, I am going to part the circle down the center. I'm trying to put her down so you're able to see what I'm doing as I'm working through. I'm going to cut her down the center, part her down the center. And I'm going to clip this half of my circle away. For this half, I just want her to be round. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to take pie sections from here. So I'm going to pie, so this is going to be the top of this is the point, and I'm working everything from that point right there. So I'm going to start from that point, make a section, from that same point, make another section, just like pie cuts, right? So I start from here. Trying to adjust the light. Wanting to make sure that you guys can see. Okay, that's a little better. Okay, so now for this I want roundness, right? I'm going to hold all of this up right here and connect it to the bang. So I see the length of the bang, the fringe that I cut right here, and I'm going to connect it to that. So I'm going to comb it, hold it up, and connect it to that length that was in my fringe. And as I work around, I'm going to connect it to the point that I have in the back. And I'm going to show you how you do that. Just want you to be able to see it on your end, what I'm doing here. So when you have this pie section here, so here was my radial section right here, right? That was the original section. This was the first section that I've taken. Right? So it looks like that little pie section right there. These 2 points right here, where the fringe is, and where this pie ends in the back, have 2 points in what I've already cut. That's what I'm joining. So when I start here, I'm joining here, and as I move around, I'm moving around the head, I want to make sure that this length and this length is matching up in the back. So I'm going to do that again in my next section. So in my next section, I start from here, from that same point, and I cut me another slice of pie. And now remember, this point up here should connect to the fringe, and the point in the back should connect to what I've cut in the back. Put her back down. And my elevation is 90 because this I'm cutting round. I want her to have as much volume as possible because my personal aesthetic is big hair, and I've consulted with my client and she agrees. So now here I am joining the back with the roundness that I'm cutting on the front. This is my last section on this half of my radial parting, and now I'm holding this hair fully up 90 degrees, perpendicular from the head. Boom. Holding that up. Coming around. And connecting it to the back. So what you'll see is that length that you cut and the length that you cut from the beginning, and you're going to have this little bit of length in the center there. You're going to cut that length off so it all sings the same song. That's how you're connecting them. And there, I've just created roundness on top of my horizontal graduation. And now for the other side. I'm going to cut it the same way that I cut the other. I made 3 pie sections on the top. So here's my first one. Try to bend her head towards you so that you can see. So I start from that point right there, and I make my first pie section. And if you're working with textured clients and they start to tangle, just use your fingers to separate the hair. No need to stop and comb through it. The nature of the hair is that it gets tangled because it's curly, kind of folds over on itself. And your fingers are a great way to detangle. Using a comb can sometimes be time consuming and a little challenging for you and your client. Using your fingers is the best move. So remember these 2 points. So this point has to connect to my fringe, and this point here has to connect to what I've cut in the back. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna elevate the front to make sure that it's connecting to my fringe. I'm gonna come around, holding up the same elevation and making sure that it's connecting in the back. And in my, just a note, my hand position, it varies. I wanna make sure that my wrists feel comfortable. However makes my wrist feel comfortable is generally how I hold, but I wanna make sure that what's consistent is my tension, because I want my haircut to be precise. I want to make sure that all of the partings, my tension, all of those things are consistent. All of those things is what aids in precision. Right, so now, again, I'm going to hold up even more. Connect this to my fringe. I see my guide. My guide being what I cut previously. I'm gonna cut right to my guide. I'm gonna come around the head because now I'm creating roundness at the top, and I'm gonna connect with the back here. Last section on the top. Right. Susie, you're saying that you would love to see it done on a longer. This same haircut I do on someone. I did it in a live February 19th on Facebook Live. It's archived and you can go back and watch it. Same haircut, just on a longer head of hair. All right. Here's my last section. And then I'm going to check for balance in the center here. Make sure I got both, same thing happening on both sides. And here it is. There she is. So we created some horizontal graduation, and then up here some roundness so that she has volume. I did give her a little bit of graduation in her fringe just so she can maintain volume. And then side profile, you see the graduation and then the roundness that's up here, right? So now I'm going to add a little bit of product. This is Aveda's Leave-In Nutriplenish Conditioner. It's one of my favorites. It has a natural heat protectant in it of sand ginger. And it has mango butter and coconut oil in it. So just really nourishing and replenishing for your clients, especially for curlies. So I moisten her back down. I use the Be Curly Style Prep as well because it gives me a little slip to my product. Don't know if you guys are able to see that. Put quite a bit of that in there. I usually don't like really heavy creams. I like gelays or jellies, foam sets, just to keep things light. And also, like, I don't want things to weigh down too much. Because again, I like volume. All right. Then, for every curly woman, a little bit of oil to finish. So this is the Nutriplenish multi-use oil, and I usually just crunch that into the hair to add shine. Usually I'll also add like a men's liquid pomade, which is what Aveda's brand is, a men's liquid pomade, but it's a jelly. It's like a gel that's really loose. So there's that. And now to dry it. How I dry my clients in salon with a hairstyle like this, I'll usually have them sit back, and I have them rest their head on the back of the chair, kind of like this. So they scoot all the way down, they rest their head on the back of the chair, and so I can get volume into all of this. I'm not going to dry it all the way. I think that'll be kind of boring to watch. I'm gonna get a little bit dry. If you guys have any questions right now, this will be a great time to ask. What products I used. So in general, for curly, I like to make sure that I'm using things with like oils and something with a slip and something with actual moisture. So I use the Nutriplenish, Aveda's Nutriplenish leave-in conditioner. I used the Aveda Be Curly Style Prep. That gives me a lot of slip. And the multi-use oil. Every curly girl should be finished with an oil. What's connected to the hood dryer? What's connected to the dryer is a sock diffuser, so that I can have high heat and high air. How long have I been doing hair? So I have been doing hair since I was 9 years old, but in salon, I've been doing hair for over 10 years. Thank you for joining me from the UK. Right, so this is a sock diffuser, again, for the person who's asking. This sock diffuser is made from a company called YS Park. It's Japanese. You can get it on Amazon. It's like $40. I trained with Nick Arrojo in the city, Soho, and he trained with Sassoon. So I have a very Sassoon kind of upbringing, but Nick, and what I said in the beginning of this is that this haircut was taught to me by one of my mentors, Lena Arrojo, which is Nick's wife. Thank you for joining from Spain and from Arkansas. Shout out, y'all. I cut hair in the city, in Soho. Aw, thank you, Susie. I appreciate you. All right, so here she is. Let's see if I can turn the camera around. Just trying to get it so the light isn't as overexposed so that you guys can see. Watching from Northern Ireland. Whoa. Hello. I live in Manhattan in the city, and I work in Soho. Here we go. And here she is, everybody. So, she's got a lot of roundness on top. Looks very round towards her face. But here is that horizontal graduation that's happening here. Which I think is just a more modern take on the graduation. And then what I would usually do is I would go through and just see any places where I want to adjust when it's dry. And I do that. There you have that. And there you go. So what we did was horizontal graduation in the back, and then we put a little horizontal graduation in her bang too, which is nice because then it helps the client have a little something to keep up, to have body in her fringe, and it doesn't all feel like it's falling flat. That's what gives that whole appearance of roundness in the front too, just to give her a little something up here. Thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate you so much. Someone asked if I always blow dry this style. Usually it depends. Sometimes I don't blow dry. Sometimes I put in a set, like a 2-strand twist or a flat twist, and I put my client under the hood dryer and then I release it then. And some clients just like a wash and go, so they just like a little bit of product and they like to go. But that also depends on the weather. I live in New York, and so sometimes people just want to be 100% dry. In which case, in salon, if I am going to diffuse or if I am going to set under a hood dryer, for any kind of release, I want to make sure that my client is 100% dry. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. I'm going to sign off. I work with Aveda. I have a lot of education up on Aveda if you want to check me out. And then my Instagram if you want to check me out there and you want to continue the learning there. It is Renee SRH. So again, my Instagram is @Renee SRH. So let's continue the learning there. Thanks for joining me. Bye.